is that anytime I talk about a republic, I think about Thomas Jefferson or James Madison or democracy. That's what republicanism means to me. And obviously the Islamic Republic does not mean that at all. And I couldn't help, this is the second time I watched the video, when people talk about Iran, very optimistic, a lot of love for the country, very proud, and yet I didn't hear very much about what they were proud about. Obviously, they exuded this kind of confidence. So when you talk about taking back your Iran, what does that mean to you?
First of all, thank you to giving this opportunity to be with you and all of your students and share my views with you guys. We believe the Islamic Republic, as you mentioned, that's Islamic Republic, they are not republic at all. That's a dictatorship and that's a theocracy. Theocracy is so far from the democracy. And this regime, when take over our country, culturally, they occupied our country. The occupation is not necessarily be physically, they culturally occupied our country. They try to change our culture, they try to keep the people away from the Iranian culture, Iranian tradition. They try to replace it with the Islamic culture. I'm not against any Islamic culture, but the thing is, we believe everybody should be free to choose which religion they want to follow. Everybody should be free, and we believe in equal opportunity for every Iranian in Iran, regardless of the gender, race, or religion. They can be participate in running the country. And one of the things, one of the big mistakes we see in overseas, including the United States, in media, administration, or other places, everybody makes the Islamic Republic with the Iranian people. We believe we have two separate entities. We have an Islamic Republic as a regime. They took over the country, and we have Iranian people. As very easy sample, when the media come talk to the people about the nuclear issue, one of the hot topics, everybody talk about it. If you ask every individual in Iran, including all of the opposition, would you like your country become a nuclear power? So why the people say no? But if you ask them, would you like the Islamic Republic have a nuclear bomb, dirty bomb in dirty hand? So everybody said no. And the media come to the people, ask the people, would you like your country to become a nuclear power? So everybody say yes. And the nighttime, the CNN broadcasted, okay, 95% of the Iranian people support the nuclear technology for the Ahmadinejad or for the regime. So that's when you talk about the Iran, the people, the Iranian people think about the separate things. And we have the same issue, for example, in the last year, Persian New Year message came from the President Obama. He congratulated the Persian New Year to people of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So we don't believe we are the people of the Islamic Republic. We are Iranian people. Mm-hmm. When you call the Chinese people, you never call them people of the Communist Republic of the China. We call them Chinese people. Mm-hmm. So those things, that's a mix up between the, when the people internationally or the government approach the Iranian people. We believe first step needs to separate the people and the administration or the regime. We have a regime in Tehran, but they are not represent the Iranian people. Mm-hmm. As you saw the last few times, they have an election show, but the election show is not, they don't have any meanings. The people chose their own government. So previously, before the election, they filter the people. After the thousands of the people signed for the candidacy, and just 4 or 5 people, they can get a chance to run.
Sure. Well, I can't help it. My students have taken me, some people in here, for many, many classes, but I've told them ad nauseum about this time when I went to New Zealand, and I was able to take 2 students with me from Cerritos to New Zealand. That's when Cerritos had money a long time ago. And I remember I got so much abuse from the people in New Zealand, and I was thinking, didn't we fight in the world wars? How come there's so much abuse? The college professors were abusing me because I was supposedly pro-George W. Bush, and I was an imperialist, and students were giving me abuse from New Zealand. And then I went into the cafeteria, and there's one good thing, and we went into the cafeteria, that they gave me free food. You used to slide a card, and the turnstile would open up, and you get free food. And there was some lady working in the kitchen for 30 years with, the net on. I'm sure you can imagine, been there for about 200 years serving food, and looked at me, and she started to give me abuse. And I said, just give me my food. I don't get abuse from the cafeteria lady. And this conflation, it's like conflating, being an American, that you must be an imperialist, you must be like George W. Bush. And it seems to me the same thing is going on. There's a spin that takes place, and we don't know anything about the Iranian people, to speak of. I know in one of my classes I was talking about, that many people in Iran really loving American culture, and you don't really hear that. So looking at the video and all the people that were speaking, what is it that you really are proud of about your culture? I mean, I've heard the word culture, Iranian culture. What is, if you were sharing to the audience here, what is it about Iranian culture that is wonderful?
Iran is roots of the democracy. If you look at the Cyrus the Great cylinder, that's one of the main things. That's right now they keep it in the British Museum. Fortunately, they have it as a guest. They come to United States. Right now is in the Washington, D.C., and next few months, I assume that should be on August or September. That should be in Los Angeles for the 2 months. That's a good, the people go and check it out, what's in the real cylinder of the Cyrus the Great. And the copy of that's on the United Nations. In the cylinder of the Kurosh, that's the main and the base thing, that's the ones on the secularism, and try to teach the people. When you go anywhere or in any war, don't push the people to change their religion. Let them to free to choose anything they want, and basic of the democracy. And that's back to 2,500 years ago. But the main culture, we believe in, that's a peace, truth, and loving people in all over the world. Iran is one of the few countries. We never had the slavery in our culture. We always believe in the equality of the people. And right now, after those situations happen in the internationally and the Islamic Republic take over our country, they try to show the dangerous face of the people. If we back to something related to United States, after the tragedy of the 9/11, the Iranian people in Iran, they were the only country in the Persian Gulf region. They came with a candle. They showed their solidarity with the American people, and versus the regime tried to show the angry face. And in other countries, in the southern Persian Gulf countries, the government, because they have a good relation with the US, they send the solidarity, and the people, they get happy in the streets. And the people got arrested and caught because they shows the solidarity with the people of the United States. If Boston tragedy happened, if you go check it out, the Facebook pages of the Iranian people from inside the country, I want to say more than 70% of the people, they show their solidarity and send a peace message, and try to show they're backing the people, each other. They don't care which part of the world they have any tragedy happen or a terrorist attack. But obviously, the Islamic Republic right now, they are showing the bad face and the dirty face to international community.
It's so interesting because I have a broad spectrum of students from a lot of different classes, but they just finished, many of them writing essays on Cyrus the Great, and they heard that stuff pummeled into them, that we use the word pragmatic toleration, that even when Persia expanded the empire, they let people keep their own religion. They knew that religion was divisive and that people would rise up, and they respected all the cultures. And we saw a film basically when Cyrus had buildings made, that everybody was paid money depending on what their contribution was. Just like somebody who's a craftsman today, money was being paid, women were being paid. I think it's an incredible lesson. We were talking about that just last week, that we don't think about that today when we think about Iran. We think of a repressive regime as opposed to some of the things that Cyrus did. And remember that Cyrus freed the Jews to go back, freedom from Babylonian captivity, and the Jews have always looked up to Cyrus. But I think that gives a very good segue to a couple of questions that we have that I saw in the video about how repressive this regime is, and then talking a little bit about your own incarceration, being in solitary confinement. So, for people that don't know, if you were talking about how repressive this regime, what examples could you give to the students so they understand this repressive regime?
After the Islamic Republic established in 1979, first thing they did, they changed the name of the Iran in United Nations to Islamic Republic of Iran, and changed our flag with Iranian national and historical symbol with the lion and sun, change it to Arabic words, and they write the 22 times Allahu Akbar on our flags. That was the first thing they changed it in our culture in Iran after the establishment of the Islamic Republic. And when they when the Khomeini took over the power, they gave lots of the promises to the people. The Marxist people, they are free to show the participation. The nationalist people, everybody will be free. We are not forcing the woman to wear the hijab, or we are not forcing any religion. And after they took over the power, they step by step, they tried to get the freedom from a portion of the people. And one thing we feel it with all of this ourselves in Iran, the regime, when they took over the power, they didn't come and they showed their real face. Step by step, they keep the people, they unite with them, and just separate one small minority of the people. And they try to execute that ideology, and then go far and far, and they get wide dictatorship in all over Iran. First, they got a portion of the leftist people. They go after the other part of the radical leftists, and then go after the monarchists, after the people they don't believe in the Islamic Republic. And now we are standing apart. Even the Muslim people, they are not free in our country. The only portion of the Muslim they are free, the people they believe the Islam the way the Khamenei like, not that real Islam. We have many Ayatollah right now in the jail, many clerics they are in the jail. The Sunni people, they are the regime dealing with the Sunni people or Shafi'i people or any other portion of the Islam as a second citizen. The abuse of the regime, that's national abuse for all of the people. And when in the 80s, after the Khomeini get all of the places, they try to force the women to wear the hijab. They force the people to follow the regulation. I remember those days, some of my family members, my colleagues, they got cuts by regime. They were in the jail. They got executed. They got tortured. And even the girls, if they caught the girls just selling the newspapers, on the leftist newspaper, the regime arrest them and torture them, or if they just holding or having the cutter for the safety on their bags, they execute them for their beliefs or for the just walking in the streets. And the regime, many times they claim, okay, if anybody was not criminal on their own minds, that they were not against the regime, so if we execute them, nothing happened, they go to the paradise, it's not a big deal. And during the last 33 years, I lost almost 25 members of my family members on the regime, or my friends. Either they got killed, executed in the jails, they got assassinated, they got died under the tortures. I think the time on the 99, last time I was on the jail and got tortured, that was the best time on the last 33 years on the jail of the Islamic Republic. During the 80s, under the Khomeini, when Khomeini was alive, that was the worst timing. And they had the most barbaric torture, and the Khomeini happened versus the Iranian people.
Mhm. Can you talk a little bit, if I got it correctly, that there were 3 fatwas against you, and maybe explain to the students here what that actually means and why there was one set up against you?
In the Islamic Republic system, we don't have only one judiciary. That's a judiciary that obviously works under the Sharia law, is not a fair system, but on the side of the judiciary, any Ayatollah has a right to issue a fatwa. Fatwa is a religious judgment they can issue versus anybody wants. And if they believe anybody, they are not following the Islamic regulation, or they are fighting against the regime, fighting against their own ideology, they can issue the fatwa, and they can, one of the fatwa, should be ask the people or any Muslim, if they find the religious, the person who issued the fatwa against it, they can kill it and they go to the paradise. And 3 different Ayatollah issue a fatwa against me for 3 different things. One of them, that was because I wrote a book about children's book, not a real philosophy book. The name of the book was Who is the Dictator? And I didn't mention any name. That was a bunch of the cartoons and a small sentence. If the dictator wants to override the rule, override this and that. And for these books, they published my execution fatwa on the newspaper. And that's a very simple book. Right now they're working on that to translate it to English. And I knew that the Syrian dissidents, they translated to Arabic. They use my book on that.
It's a bestseller now.
That's a free book. They can free download it. I'm not making any money about my books. And that was one of the fatwa. The other one was on publication. That's a Vohooman. You mentioned that. Because I promote the pre-Islam culture in Iran. Other mullahs got upset why Roozbeh tried to promote the culture before the Islam and this and that. So the other one, the last one was related to my activity on the student uprising, I assume, on the 99. Mm-hmm. And I just got informed last month, one of the fatwa got renewed, and I just read it on one of the newspaper, in the Western newspaper. They said Makarem Shirazi renewed his fatwa against the Roozbeh. So that's religious judgment, the fatwa. Yeah. And unfortunately, when the Ayatollah issue a fatwa, you don't know who's gonna enforce the judgment. Any fundamental people from any country, they can come and execute you, or they can assassinate you. And fortunately, one of my best colleagues and friends, Dr. Kasra Wafadari, he was a history professor at the Paris University. He was one of my co-founder at the MPG, Marzeh Por-Gohar, who got assassinated in the Paris 8 years ago with another fatwa. And we lost many people with the fatwas. And anytime anybody tried to take the people to the justice, the just regime just tried to show, oh, that was not our judiciary. One religious clerics issued a fatwa, that's nothing we can do, and we cannot catch the people who enforce it.
Yeah. Do you ever worry, even though you're here in California, that someone is going to enforce that here?
Hopefully not, but when you cannot working for the freedom is not free. If you are trying to achieve the freedom, you have to pay the cost. And the only thing we can do, we try to bring the cost down for myself and my colleagues and all of our Iranian nationalist people, or Iranian people in other language. You cannot go eat the whole cake and become skinny. So.
Yeah. Well, I think I took this down from the video. I hope that I have it right here. But in the video, it said, your dad said, the path that you are on is both unrealistic and dangerous. What did he mean to you?
My dad has this different personality than me. He moved to United States before the revolution. He is a typical man. He tried to enjoy his life, and he's going to the work, and he lives in the United States for almost 40 years now, 38 years. And he is a U.S. citizen. It is far from the things happening inside the country. And maybe on many people, I'm not blame them. Everybody has a right to choose to live freely, and they don't want to live under the stress. And they just, if they cannot live under any regime, they choose other country to move in and continue their life, enjoy their life. That's a good choice, and I'm proud, my dad and any other Iranian, to choose that kind of the life. But I assume some people needs to be attention for and try to make the life for other people same as every people has equality, has a right to live under the freedom. The people has a right to choose their religion, choose the way they want to dress up or they want to live. So I'm not blame him, but he is a typical Iranian American that lives in the United States. That's
Yeah.
right.
Well, let me get this right. You could make your life very simple, right? You said your father's lived here for 38 years?
Yes.
He's a citizen?
He is a
You
US
are not a citizen?
No, I'm not a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, so you could become a citizen very easy because your father is here, and you could have a nice, simple life, right?
Yeah, that's sure. If
Yeah.
I want it, if I choose it.
Yeah, but I'm getting at, you have a passion, for something. When your dad talks about, when I said this thing about being unrealistic and dangerous, clearly I can see the dangerous part. When he's talking about unrealistic, and we were talking about this before, it seems to me that you have a Herculean task to go at the things that you want. I really look up to you and what you're trying to accomplish. I said, how do you take your, army of people to come out there and overthrow the Islamic, Republic? And the kind of question, and I apologize, for the pronunciation, but the Marzeh Por-Gohar, what is the political manifesto? What is it you hope to accomplish with that party?
We believe, as a Marzeh Por-Gohar, meaning is the closest translation is the glorious frontiers. What we believe our mission is bring the secular republic in our country. We try to bring the democracy in our country. It's not easy when you don't want to be dependent to any country, any government. You don't want to anybody dictate you how you fight against the regime, how you direct your fight against the regime. I believe, and my colleagues believe, we need to be independent to can continue to be fighting for our freedom. One of the things I always mention in any Iranian campaigns, before the freedom, we need to get independent back to our country. If you want to be independent, you cannot get financial aid from any foreign countries. If you don't want to get the direction from any government or any international media, that's hard to continue to fight. Obviously, everybody censor our voice because sometimes the things we said against the regime is not in favor of the State Department. Sometimes you talk something is not in favor of the European Union. You talk about your mission. Some of the media, they don't like your things you said. Or one easy sample, in 2009, when the people uprised after the election show in Iran, everybody, all of the Western media, including the Fox News to CNN, from the State Department to Pentagon to European Union to any other Western countries, try to show the Iranian people uprise to bring another Western Islamist moderate and the power. As a Mousavi was a person everybody promoted. Obviously, if you look at deeply on the YouTube clips the people uploaded on the video, the Mousavi was one of the criminals in the regime. And the people, the freedom fighters, try to show their independence. But all of the media, at the end, they try to hijack the movement and label it as a Mousavi followers. I remember when I work with the other colleagues here, and that was the biggest demonstration happened in Iranian American community. In Los Angeles, the media reported as 40,000 people. They came at the Federal Building in the Westwood. We had a long demonstration, and all of the slogan was related to freedom and regime change. And at the night time, I was the person who in front of the line and tell the people and chanting in front of the line. At the night time, the CNN and the Fox News, both of them, both sides, they shows the demonstration. I don't know where they came, the green flags, they mix it up and montage on the video, they shows the Mousavi followers organize the demonstrations. When I escaped, when I back to my country, across the borders illegally, I was in Iran for 4 days and a half, and when I back, everybody tried to label my trip to support the Mousavi. So our people, the MPG people, they were the people who brought the problems of the Mousavi, or on 1988, when the mass execution happened in the dark summer in Iran. The regime executed 30,000 Iranian prisoners in a jail in 1 week. The Mousavi was the prime minister, and he was exactly responsible for those killings. And we're looking for someday we can bring him as like the Khomeini and Ahmadinejad on the same justice, and he can talk about the crime against the humanity. If any crime against the humanity happen anywhere in the world, I don't think that's a time they can cover it, and the justice, that's 20 years far from the crime against the humanity or mass execution or any felony happen. And you change, you are not a good man, you can become a new president. So when you want to fight on your cause, that's very hard when you are alone, and the media try to censor you. We don't just working versus the Islamic Republic. We try with own grassroots media, YouTube channels, and social media. We can send our message out to the people, and hopefully the people like you, any students, you are not depend on any paycheck from any institution or organization. You can help us to tell the world what the real people want inside the countries.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to share a little story with you and see if there might be a connection. I had the chance to interview 6 Burmese political prisoners. And I think sometimes when you're lucky, which I am very lucky living in the United States in a republic, and one of the things that really hit me, that a lot of these people were thrown in insane prison, which is the actual name of the prison, which is insane, but it's called insane prison, where they were there for 7, 14, 21 years. And one of the persons I was interviewing said, well, I was only in prison for 7 years. And they talked about the most horrific atrocities that happened to them, including sexual atrocities against them. They talked a little bit about psychological feelings. They would take somebody after 7 years and say, this is your lucky day. You've been here 7 years, you're now free, and lead them right to the door. And then right when they got to the door, said, we're only kidding, you're back here again. And I interviewed all of the political prisoners, again, very different times. And 2 things that really hit me. One of them was how badly they wanted real republicanism, that they wanted democracy, which humbled me and made me feel kind of, I don't know, very lucky, and I take what I have here for granted, this republicanism. And then the next thing that they were talking about was forgiveness, which really blew me away after all that they had been through. And they said that they didn't want to, basically hurt the military junta, that they wanted to convert the military junta, they wanted to forgive them. Obviously, there's a very strong Buddhist sentiment. Many of the people there feel that they deserve what they're getting from the military junta. And I guess my question, given that, and obviously you're talking about a real republic, is there a spirit of forgiveness? What would you do with respect to the leadership to bring about some kind of reform? That is it something that militant, you have to do it from a militaristic point of view, Are you going to use moral suasion to convince people that there has to be changes there? I mean, how do you change the leadership in Iran?
Okay. First of all, I'm personally against any military conflict against my countries. That's my personal point of view. I don't think any military invention in my country, they can help the people. That's at all. And if I just give you a couple of the samples, when the Saddam Hussein attack in Iran in 1980s, the Iranian people, that was the worst timing for the regime, but the Iranian people get unite with the regime, defending the country versus the Saddam Hussein, when all of the international community support the Saddam Hussein. And the people continue the war and defending the country for 8 years. So the Iranian people, normally, typically, they are the nationalist people. They don't believe any military conflict, they can change the system, and the people want to change their own system with their own hands. In the region, if we look at the other countries, like the former Yugoslavia, the Milosevic, when I talk to, I have a good relation with many leaders of the revolutions of around the world. We do have a chatting together. Sometimes we get together in one countries. We share our experiences. When I talked to them, they told me the worst timing for the opposition of the Milosevic, that was the timing the NATO attacked Yugoslavia. And at that time, most of the opposition groups, they couldn't do anything, or the people look at them like the people who want to trade their own countries. And after that, the people, they could change the regime. And that's one thing, definitely I'm against it. I don't think they can help anybody. And not only help the international security, Iran is a big country. It's not like Iraq, even though the Iraq, I don't think that solved the issue with the military conflict. But Iran is 4 times bigger than Iraq, and the people are more aggressive than the Iraqi people. And unfortunately, the international community tried to put their own agenda to change the ideology of the freedom fighters, or buy them up and label them, or bring some, everybody, if anybody be in jail in Iran, is not the meaning everybody is a freedom fighter, like any other countries. Anybody escaped from the jail and came over here, just try to get some financial aid from some of the agencies, and try to become a new Chalapi or Hamid Karzai or any other international figure. Probably it is not the help. And when the people, they buy the people or create the opposition, and then they try to lead the people the wrong way. I assume and I think sometimes we really need the moral support from international community, moral support from the people, and obviously we need the help from the international community. How they can help us if they don't want to get engaged in military or with the armed forces? Just remember in the South Africa, when they tried to get help from the international community, one of the things that was a non-violent help. Just boycott the regime, don't buy anything, don't do any business with the regime. If we talk about the sanctions, I assume the sanction is the last step and the last tools of the peaceful, non-violent tools working against the regime. But if we talk about the sanction, why the regime is not collapsed with the sanction? That's exactly like Saddam Hussein. When the sanction is not enforced and they have some holes and they can be doing the business with the sanction, obviously the sanction is not works. Just many new reports came in last few months. If you look at that, right now in Tehran, you can go and buy the 2013 Bentley. If the country is a sanction, how come you can have a 2013 Ferrari or Bentley or high-end luxury cars inside the country. Or if that's any Mercedes right now, you want it, you can find it inside the country. The sanction is not yet enforced, just doing the business. And anytime the regime is lacking the answer, the people just blame it. Okay, because of the sanction, we don't have this, because we don't have that. If the regime is under the sanction, how come they can support the Syria's regime, or how they can support the terrorist organization? So if they cannot sell the oil, or they cannot doing the business with the international community, how can they survive? That's just labeled as a sanction, but they're doing the business with every single country, even the United States. I think we are close to the beach of the Pacific, but if you go to the Persian grocery store, the price of the Persian Gulf tuna fish much cheaper than the Pacific tuna fish. So that's simple.
Great. Would you be willing to take a couple of questions? I might give you a chance to catch your breath out
Sure.
here from any of the students. Will we have anybody that would like to stand up? You want to ask a question? Maybe if you just come a little closer, given or yeah, Angel, yeah, please.
Well, I got a question about your political party. What has it learned from the mistakes that the new governments from the Arab Spring have done? Have you guys really looked into it, and how does, especially if your political party did come into power in Iran, how would you guys, there's obviously a lot of blueprints now for you guys to look at. So what have you guys learned from that?
Thank you, and I think that was not a real spring for the region. That's the things happened there, and I'm not sure they make the situation better than before, or which direction the people led. We had the same experience. We lived in 33 years ago under the Shah dictatorship. That's Mohammad Reza Shah was a dictator, and he was the person the people uprised against him, tried to bring the democracy in the country. But unfortunately, the people, even they didn't bring the democracy in Iran, they lost every single freedom they had, like the freedom of the religion, freedom of the how they want to dress up, or any other business freedom or anything they had. And in those countries, they call it as a so-called Arab Springs. I think that the main thing is the people needs to find out what they own, the people, the real people inside the country wants. They make their own country in the future. Don't let any other countries try to choose what type of the government that's good for their countries. Nobody can feel Iran like any Iranian people like me to see what type of the government they can should be good for my country, how we can start our make our future of the economy on which base, how we want to deal with the other countries, and what's the blueprint of the future of the Iran. Iran in the tomorrow of the Iran, we believe we can make it with their own experience of the people. Iran has a number one escape of the educate people right now. That's in any part of the United States or any other country. If you look at any successful institution, you can see some of the Iranian scientists, Iranian professors, or any educated Iranian people that lives there. We need to decide what we want, not what the West or the other country wants for the Iran. And one thing we know, unfortunately, right now, because of the international economic crisis, one way the international community they can waive the crisis is making it new countries. If they want to make the Iran separated change it to the 6 different countries, obviously that's a good future business for the Western countries to build the 6 air forces, 6 armies, or 6 structures. but it's not good for the future of the countries, for
Yeah.
my countries.
Very good. All right.
First of all, on behalf of the Global Studies Club and all the people here, I would like to thank you for coming here. It's such an honor, and we're happy you're here. My question today is as specific as it relates to the situation on the ground in Iran. There's an indication, at least in the news, that political parties are very much at war with each other and separated. And seeing as the Ayatollah himself is of old age, and well, time will take him. Do you envision anything happening after the Ayatollah, or even before he goes? Because he's kind of taking a step back down. At least that's what the indications show. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here. And respond to your question. After a very short time after the revolution, and when the people realized the country culturally occupied by the clerics, the people start resistance against the regime and try to bring back their freedom and try to change the regime. And freedom is not free, as I mentioned before. We are continue to fight to bring the regime down. We don't want to wait to Khamenei passed away in the natural life. So we try to bring him in a justice if we can, and if the international community let us to do our job, instead of the try to change the plan of the Iranian movement.
Very good. Please.
Thank you. Could you talk and help me understand a little bit about fanaticism? Because we just had a bombing here in the United States. We have our own fanatics, the kind of people that go in and shoot abortion doctors, that go out and protest against the deaths of American soldiers because, you know, the United States is godless as those homos and all this stuff. But they seem to rule the world. Fanatics seem to get everything that they want, but yet the majority of people in the world are good, they're peaceful, but we don't do anything about it. And so I'm wondering if you were to talk to some of the Islamists out there, the people of Islam, what is it that is going on in that community? Why don't they hone in? They're fanatics. It gives Islam a bad name. Everybody, you know, it's a precursor to so many wars against stereotypes and all this stuff. Muslims in the United States are feeling that they are being racially profiled. Well, that's because they have fanatics that misbehave, and they don't rein them in. Is it because they are part of it, or are they scared? What is going on with the relationship between moderate and some of the fanatics within that?
The individual nation, they are responsible for their own freedom. We thank you. Anybody want to help us? That's good. We say shaking hand, but we are not looking the President of the United States come and make my country free. If the President Obama wants to help us, that's more than welcome to help us on our freedom. But I remember a few years ago that was a demonstration happening in Iran, and the people chanting, Obama, Obama, are you with them or with us? That was the demonstration happening in Iran. That was not part of our organization, but that was an event happening in Iran. And obviously, some people, the people that they spread under the dictatorship, they're always looking for the help from any part of the international community. And I'm not blame anybody when they live under those conditions. They want to think freely, and anybody can help them. They are asking for them, and anything happen to them, first thing the people blame the person who tried to inflict them. I think everybody, any nation, they are responsible for their own freedom, for their own countries, and anybody want to help them, that's a good thing, good wills, why not?
Thank you for coming here. You mentioned you were a journalist in Iran? Okay.
Yes.
Being a student journalist as well. So you were arrested for things that you written in publications there in Iraq. And so what do journalists have to do to protect themselves there in the uprising things that are against the government and things that, things that are going to be written there.
I was 3 times in jail. 3 times I got arrested for my political activity or journalist activity in Iran. And the journalists, people, and the writers, they have a most dangerous job in Iran right now at this point. And if you look at the record, the Islamic Republic is the first killer of the journalists, and always that's and the blocking the bloggers or against the bloggers. Iran, I think, is on the bottom of the list in the 3rd countries, and most of the time they are in the top 5 on anything related to the pen and the paper and social medias. And the thing is, regime always try to waive and claim the people who got arrested, they are not got arrested because of their own writing. Obviously, some people, they got arrested at their own desk at the newspaper because of the day before articles. And then when they arrest them, they said, you are doing something against the national security, or you were a spy for the CIA or the Mossad, or many other labels. Similar labels happen for any freedom fighter around the world. Always the dictatorship try to label the people, you are connected to you are spying for the other countries, those things. And the way we can protect them, just bring the name up, and especially the people, if you, right now, you want to ask anybody, which reporter or journalist or writers you know that's under the pressure in Iran, most of the times, top 5 comes one of the 5 reformists. The regime wants you know their names. The real journalists, the people you cannot see their names regularly on the media or on the website. That's at the middle of the line. You have to find the name and bring the name up, write the letter to the Amnesty International and any international organization. They can help them. For example, I remember one of our colleagues, actually she was she has a different view versus me. She was reformist, but somehow the reformists try to don't bring her name out. That was a Hengam Shahidi. And the other international community and opposition, they don't like her because she were with the groups. They don't like the groups, and the groups, they don't want to protect them. Her, and our organization came up, okay, we know she is not standing with us, but she is one of the victims of the journalism in Iran. We need to support it. We have started organizing a campaign for the person who was not belonging to our organization or our point of view, and successfully we can push the regime to release her from the jail.
Okay. All right, I think we have time for one more. Leobi, you wanted to ask a question here?
If necessary.
We reserve the right to use any ways we need to make our country free. But at this point, we think we still to use all of the tools of the non-violation and the peaceful tool to change the regime, we can use it. Obviously, all of the use or method we are working on that is not working inside the frame of the regime. We are not working to regime to come and make a free election. That's a free election under the Constitution of the Islamic Republic is a joke. It's not happening. The only way that we had a successful event with a peaceful activity from the South Africa to any other countries, but we need to make our own way to find out how we can force the regime to leave the power and hand it to the people.
Very good. I wanted to just say one thing that I felt like I learned a lot of stuff today, and I think part of the job is just to start changing people's attitudes, because there's so much bad information out there, and there's misinformation, disinformation. It's like looking at these things, and I guess in a lot of ways I come out with a much more humane feeling about Iran, having spoken to you. And I guess the question that I have, we're always doing this, my students in global studies that I brought over here, we're looking at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and we have such limited information about what's going on the ground. and then we're making conclusions based on very, very shoddy evidence because we don't know what goes on. So I guess the question I have, as we're starting to learn, how can you, me, all of us, start disseminating the information to give people a very different view about what happened, the vision? Because I think we look at Iran in many respects very, very bad, type of a government.
Pages, everybody, any individual people, they can help to tell the truth to the people. And if anything comes from the grassroots people, very fast, they get the spread in the cyber world, and everybody can realize it. Just find out just the Google tool. You can do the search for the secular Bahraini, secular Syrian, secular Egyptian, and find them and just follow them, retweet their own tweets. And if you want, you can find anything about the secular Iranian people. You can follow my tweet through my Twitter. You can find the other people through the Bahrain to Syrian to Egyptian. That you don't need to be depend on the Fox News or the CNN, so you can be in your own media. And as you has a concern about my citizenship, I am really happy to. You are hosting me in your country. I am happy to live in the democratic country. I am happy to live here, be as a resident. But as I mentioned to some of the officials here, anytime, if you don't like me, just give me 2 weeks notice. I can find another place in the world. I'm going to move on to other countries. I'm sure some places in the world I can find and I can live. As long as I'm not bothering you, you are happy I'm here. I'm happy to be part of your community as long as I can. I'm help the local community, your national security, anything I can.
I would just like to say a couple of words here. And I pride ourselves here at Cerritos College when we talk about global education, that it's really global. It isn't just about Americans talking about things, that we have people from other countries sharing. We've had some great people, as I said, Mary Montague from Northern Ireland, you that really makes it come alive. And I'm very happy for the support that we have. I want to thank Melina for making this suggestion. And I think one of the other parts here that we are very keen. David was in the back, David Mendoza with the camera, and your camera person here. We're really going to live stream, so we have the ability to disseminate this information. If we get a copy of your material and have permission to show it to people, because we do have a very large global audience. Anything that we can do to help, I think that's important. I also want to explain, and Melina can probably do a better job, but I'm sure you can look at our institution and understand that it's very humble, but we become stronger through our humbleness, and that's one of the things. But we are very appreciative, that you've come out here. I think it's given us a different perspective, and also say in my global studies class, not only did you cover a little bit of the revolution of 1979, where I talk about Jimmy Carter and making a lot of concessions to the Shah and our myopic foreign policy, but a lot of the other issues. And in the class, we've spoken of Zoroastrianism. I get a feeling here that some of your writings has to do with Zarathustra and Zoroastrianism, and good works, good deeds, good thoughts. We covered that in great detail, and I think it's exciting to kind of have that history that goes over, for a prolonged period of time. I think a lot of the things that you're speaking of now just give me a different flavor, and it makes me kind of want to jump on board and help any way I can. So we're very grateful for you coming out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.